We've got 3 107 SLs in this garage at the moment. My first ever car, 280 SL, works absolutely fine. It's got a few rusty holes in it that I need to weld up. The parts car, which is the rustiest car I've ever seen, a 77 or 78 450 SL, that'll be going to the Mercedes graveyard soon, so if anyone needs any obscure parts, let me know. And this car here, which I bought a year ago, 280 SL, bought it in bits, and we've been slowly but surely putting it together, but our progress has slowed down significantly, and I need to get this car finished so that I can get the gold parts car out the garage and start working on our silver AMG and also on our Pagoda, which has got a few leaks. So the first thing I'm going to do on this car is just sort the bumpers out. Remove the bumper off this car. It was already removed, and there is a video on this channel about how to remove the bumper, but as you can see, this bumper looks absolutely fine from the front, but once you take these off, you can see the first signs of rust, and the other bumper that we did was in substantially worse condition than this. So if you have an SL and you get a chance, my advice would be to whip your bumper off and have a look behind it, because once these start rusting through, you'll start to get bubbling on the chrome, and that is very, very expensive to replace. So if you have a chance, whip the front bumper off your car and have a look at the back of it, and if it's starting to look like this, my advice would be to paint it with rust-proofing paint to make sure it doesn't get any worse. What we're going to do with this one is actually take this complete bumper to pieces, and I'm going to send it to a powder coating company that I've been using with excellent results, to see what this comes out with once it's been powder coated. What I do is use a DeWalt impact wrench to get some of these, or to try and get some of these bolts off, because they're going to be rusted solid in my experience, and the DeWalt, an impact wrench, basically has that knocking motion and can sometimes break rust free. Now, these brackets here are super duper expensive. When you take them off, make sure that you mark which way round they go, i.e. which way they slope. I think these bolts took an enormous amount of impact driving to get out, and they are rusty as you like, so we'll probably just be replacing the bolts and the washers with stainless steel ones. These brackets are small enough to put in a little rust bath at home, but I think I'll just give them to the sandblasters and the powder coaters and see how they come out. We're going to take this number plate holder off. Now, these are super expensive. You can still get them, but they're very expensive. I remember refurbing the other one from the other red car, but this nut here, these are 13mm nuts, does not want to come off, and we don't have a 13mm impact socket. Here's what we need: an impact socket set from 10 to 24mm, just £15.99. So this bolt here does not want to come out, and what we're going to try and do is use an electric impact wrench to get that out. Now, if that's a 13mm bolt, if that doesn't work, we're going to try using one of these bolt extractors. Now, the thing about bolt extractors is the decent ones are nearly always 3/8 of an inch, whereas your impact driver's 1/2 an inch. But if you get a set with a hexagonal top like that, you can, of course, use your impact sockets to go over the top of that. Okay, so let's try this first and see how we get on. Okay, now that we've extracted that, we're going to see if we can extract the main bolt holding the bumper together. The center section is held in by a series of clips. You can see in this case most of them are broken, but once again, just like the other bumper we looked at, once you take that rubber piece there off, that center section is going to be rusty as you like. Just going to peel the rubber off this center section and see if there's anything that can be done to save it. It's not as bad as some I've seen. We might be able to reuse that. We'll see what the powder coaters have to say. We do need to get some new clips. We'll take the old ones out, and then we'll clean up all the rust in these channels. Just put that in a rust bath, make sure we get all the rust out, and that should clean up nicely. Now, this is another nut that often gives trouble. You can't use a nut extractor on there because the other side is just turning and it's a smooth coach bolt. Unfortunately, you can't cut it out with an angle grinder because the angle grinder hits the side of here. So we're going to have to very carefully cut the coach bolt the other side and put a groove in there that we might be able to get a screwdriver on and hold it. This is what's on the other side of that nut, a smooth coach bolt, and when we're turning the nut, it's rusted together. This is all just turning, so we're going to try and very, very carefully cut a groove along there and hopefully be able to get a big screwdriver in there on one side and a spanner or an impact wrench on the other side. Now, I think I've mentioned this before, but this is actually a very expensive little piece of chrome trim. You do not want to cut into it with the angle grinder. So my advice would be, rather than cutting that way and risking cutting into it, excuse me, cut this way, and then at least if you do make a mistake, the rubber strip that sits over that will cover any cut marks. It really helped to have two people doing this, but we're going to try and hold this side with a screwdriver. I've put a glove on because that screwdriver can turn in my hand and end up burning the skin. Okay, we're probably going to need to clamp this screwdriver in somehow. Plan A and plan B has not worked, so plan C is to use a map torch just to heat up that nut there to see if we can break the rust free, and then try again with the impact wrench and the screwdriver. Okay, a bit of heat does it every time. Bear in mind that that is going to be still super hot, so wait a little while before you touch it. We have that piece off. Now this car's obviously had a little knock. You can see it's slightly dented there. It's not something we did, but that is just rust that we'll be able to get off. And now that we've taken that off, we can reveal this little bolt here. We'll get the impact wrench on there and should be able to get that off. In an ideal world, you'd just be able to undo this bolt, and the two sections of the bumper would slide apart. But this isn't an ideal world. We need to get an impact wrench on the other side of these bolts, and in order to do that, we're going to need to take off the chrome. And in order to take off the chrome, we're going to have to take off the rubber bumper sections. Now those are held on with two bolts, one here and one at the top here. And usually they'll both turn and make our life really difficult, but we'll see how we get on with this. Enough, that one actually came off using the impact wrench, and what the impact wrench does is that knocking action of the wrench actually breaks the rust free. Whether we'll be so lucky on this one is another question. Are usually 10mm if they're not completely rusted, so we're going to try and get our 10mm impact wrench on there and see how we get on. Once you've undone those nuts, this should just peel back like so, revealing hopefully not too rusty it's not looking that great underneath there, but we didn't have many expectations or high expectations, or in the name of Charles Dickens, great expectations. The section's not actually too bad. The car's obviously had a few knocks in its time, but to be perfectly honest, that's not really something you're going to notice. So we'll just clean this up and that should come out fine. But you can see that this lip here is in a pretty bad way. It's completely rusted away. And over here, where the car's had a little knock, it's dented in. Now that's not a problem, we can undent that. You might get away with this, and in actual fact, it might be possible to weld a piece in there. But let's take this off first, the chrome piece, and see what we're left with. You'll need a little 8mm spanner to get these off. If you're very lucky, they will come off nice and easily. Normally what happens is they end up snapping off and you have to drill them out, but let's see how we get on. Okay, this one looks like it's actually coming out. If you can move it a little bit, but it gets really tight, the secret is to wind it back in and out and keep doing it. Otherwise, all you'll do is you'll snap the head off it. You do not want to do that. It's a right old pain to drill these out. If you've seen the other video, you'll see how many of these we had to drill out. We're one down. To here, you'll need to use an open-ended spanner because the socket will get jammed under there, and you might get away with an 8mm wrench. Just went too well, unexpectedly well. We managed to get all 6 of those screws out, and now we should just be able to lift this piece off. Hoping that this piece will just lift off like so, revealing behind it the beginnings of the horrors that you see on most of these bumpers, but I think we may have just caught this one in time. These chrome pieces are the expensive part. I think they're about £600 each, and that rusting that you see there will manifest itself. You just see the first signs of pitting or bubbling in the chrome on this side. We might be just in time to save it. What we'll do is we'll get rid of that rust, and then we'll spray the inside of this with rust encapsulator. But sometimes when you're grinding that rust out, you grind straight through to the chrome below. So now that we've taken the chrome off, we can now get to these bolts here, which are the last two bolts holding this section on. All the bolts are out, the bolt the two bumper sections together, but don't try and just lever this off, because this section of chrome sits on top of it and you'll end up bending that chrome up. So the easiest thing to do is just to take this rubber off and this piece of chrome. The alternative is you could just pull that and it should just slide apart. This bolt is so rusted it's just turning, and on this section it hasn't even got the fitting at all. So I think what we're going to try and do is just peel off the bumper rubber and see how we get on. Just peeled straight off, and as is often the case, the square fittings just end up turning in the rubber sections, but that's not a problem. Let's get these little screws off, take the chrome off, separate the two bumper screws. Came out without a problem, and we caught this one just in time. You can see the first signs of rust here. I'm hoping that we should be able to just grind that out and then paint it from the other side, and that will look just fine. The last thing we need to do is just separate this bumper. It'll be slightly rusted together, but we should just be able to bend it and it should come apart. There we have it. Last thing we've got to do before we take these off to get powder coated is just to remove that square fitting. We're just going to hold the back of it with a set of mole grips and then get the impact wrench on the front of it. It'll probably snap because that does look pretty rusty, but we can but try. Enough. That actually came out, so we might be able to save that fitting, which is good. We'll be able to reuse that in the rubber part of the bumper. So there we have it. We've separated both metal parts of the bumper. We're going to take those to the powder coaters now, get a quote for how much it costs to powder coat those, and also to see if they can re-weld that lip up. While they're doing that, we're going to replace all of the bolts with stainless steel new bolts. We'll clean up those rubbers, polish the chromes, grind out the rust on the back of those chrome bumpers, and then rust encapsulate them, and then put the whole thing back together. And sadly, it is something you'll never see, but if you don't address the rust issues on your bumper, you can see what's happened to the back of that chrome. It'll start bubbling through, and you will see that it will start to annoy you, and then you'll get a shock when you find out how much those chrome pieces actually cost. Just picked up these Fiat 238 radiator pipes here that have been sent over from Italy, but they arrived new, but they were rusty from new. So we've just gone along to Motorcycle Powder Coating in Bristol. They do mainly industrial stuff, but they do a lot of classic car parts and a lot of classic motorbike frames, etc. But they always do an excellent job. They've done these super quick for us at a really reasonable price, so I'm looking forward to fitting those. These guys is they are not going to turn you away if you turn up with smaller parts like this. Once they get in these powder coated, these bits here are going to cost you minimum, I would say, about £10 each for these small parts, and these larger parts probably at least £50. You might be able to negotiate with them, but remember, if you were stripping this down yourself, you'd spend an enormous amount of time, and by the time you've undercoated it, rust encapsulated it, glossed it, and all the rest of it, you're probably talking quite a lot of money in paint, and it will never quite be as good as powder coating. So on this occasion, rather than going and buying these bits new, I'm going to spend the money on powder coating. It's going to cost me somewhere between £100 and £150. I'll see if I can negotiate with them. And same for you if you bring it in here. Definitely worth doing with these guys. The last R107 bumper we refurbished, we actually bought the front bumper stiffeners for these guys here, Magnum Classic car panels, and they have some good stuff, both for the 107 Mercedes and various other models of Mercedes as well. You can see they sell the bumper chromes there. We took the front wings off them. I think we bought 2 front wings off them for the Red Dragon that was stolen, but this is the bits that we bought here for that car as well, £354.78, and they were delivered to a car place in Bristol, so there was no delivery charge. We just picked them up from there. And it's good to know that when we come to do the back bumper on the car that we're doing at the moment, that you can also get the chrome sets here from them. Worth noting at the bottom of that page, when it's gone, it's gone. They don't make them anymore. Mike Smirk's website, and click on playlists, and then on the Red Dragon playlist here, view all playlist, you will see here there is a front bumper video that we've done before, and that bumper video will give you all the bolt sizes and screw sizes, etc., and some different parts that you may need when you're refurbishing your bumper.